trade manager for Virginia Economic Development Partnership. So she will share the podium with Russ will follow up on her.
Thank you, Lorna. Thank you. Welcome to all the delegates. I'm glad to have you here in Norfolk, and hopefully you'll find this session informational. The good news is Virginia's open for business, and I can't think of a better way than to start this dialogue with the Norfolk Sister City delegations that are here. And so Wayne asked me to share a little bit about how we do it. My specific role is to help Virginia companies that want to export their products or services globally. So we have a dedicated revenue stream from the Commonwealth of Virginia that allows us to do that each year. We are funded again, like I said, by the General Assembly, and I'm proud to share that this year we're celebrating our 30th birthday as far as international trade, and we just hosted our 66th Virginia Conference on World Trade in Richmond, Virginia, where our governor, McAuliffe, championed his love of international trade and economic development, and he's not going to be finished, or he's destined for us to be #1 in everything that we do. So how do we do it? I'm one of 7 trade managers in Virginia, and we help companies in several ways. The first is through our global network. We have 75 global network consultants that provide valuable in-country market research specific to a product or service. So when we would go to, let's just say, Canada, we have a consultant that we work with that would partner us with flight companies that are interested in doing business with Virginia. These companies, these consultants develop market entry strategies, identify potential distributors, and they conduct due diligence and arrange potential customer meetings that are sector specific. We also host about 20 trade missions a year, and this is where we take a delegation under the auspice of the state of Virginia, and we arrange face-to-face meetings in country with our delegations. They're well planned. We offer language assistance and networking opportunities. So although you might have 12 companies that would attend with you on a trade mission, whether you're doing any type of international trade, there's always some like factor, some story to be told. And we find a lot of the cultural exchange and a lot of the sharing of experiences end up benefiting some of the business-to-business opportunities. Each year, we recruit 25 companies to a program called VALE, Virginia Leaders in Export Trade. And this award-winning program assists companies throughout the Commonwealth to accelerate their international business. Last year, or in the last graduating class, over a 2-year period, companies increased their sales by 57%. And how do we help them do that? We offer each company $15,000 in export marketing assistance, and as well access to private sector partners if they need a website translated, or they need tax information or attorney information. There's many ways that we can help those companies. And finally, one of the other ways that we help companies is, as you know, this is a huge defense region. In 2012, we were the only state in the nation to receive federal dollars. We received $1.5 million from the federal government to help companies that are doing typical DoD work to diversify into commercial markets. So I'm proud to share that we're in our 2nd year, and I've spent just about exhausted our second round of funding. So that's been a wonderful experience for us. Typically, it takes about 18 months for an international business transaction to close. That's a little bit longer than most people want, but anything that's worthwhile is not going to happen overnight. As you know, you need to go in country, make yourself present, establish the relationships, and so on. Just a little bit of information about Virginia's exports. And in 2013, we exported over $17 billion in merchandise exports. Our largest trading partners are Canada, China, and Mexico. And just to give you a top 10, industrial machinery, electrical machinery, plastics, vehicles, paper and paperboard, aircraft and spacecraft, soybeans, medical instruments, man-made fibers, yarns, and food industry, specialty food industry, and animal feed. So those are just some of the top products that we are exporting, and we're open for business. I mean, there's a lot of, I could sit up here and talk forever about how we help companies. There's a recent company, Richard Diamondstein, who exports mattresses here for the military out of Hampton Roads, but he also recently exported them to Chengdu, China. And so when you think Chengdu, China, why would the market there want to buy that? First of all, these mattresses are selling for about $16,000 US. I don't think I will ever be able to afford a mattress at $16,000. But the Chinese market is very interested in American-made products. They're interested in the status. It was a long business cycle for him, but he's just picked up 3 new distributors for his product. So through these programs, he was part of the Valet program. We have been able to successfully increase international reach for Virginia companies. Any questions?
When you go on a trade mission to a country, how do you decide which sites to visit? Is that developed by that country, the recipient country?
Well, normally it's done by the needs of our clients.
Okay.
We pick it that way. We also arrange them around large trade shows as well, industry trade shows. Yes, sir.
The $15,000 assistance is in cash or in services?
Basically, companies can use that in lots of $2,500. So the funds go from us to the actual vendor. So they never have to, the money never crosses their hands.
So it's basically services and consultancy work?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Are you investing on renewable energy?
We have companies that are interested in investing in selling their services internationally on renewable energy. Yes, sir.
What particular, like solar or wind?
Wind, offshore wind coalition, solar, and I can give you a whole. That's not really my expertise, but we have a division in Richmond that can definitely help you with that if you'd like me to find out more information for you.
Thank you.
You have good contacts from these sessions so that you can talk to them after and they can help you with those linkages as well. Okay, thanks very much. So we're moving to our last presentation. This is by Russell Held. He's Deputy Executive Director of Virginia Port Authority. Thanks very much.
Welcome to Norfolk. The conversation this morning is really good, and there's so many things I want to go into, but because of time, I'm going to limit myself to 2 things. I'm going to try to stay on topic. First of all, as the Port Authority, and because you all are from port cities, how we work with these various economic development agencies. And the second thing I want to touch on is some things that Tom talked about as far as gardening or growing businesses versus the hunting, going out and getting that one, and then maybe weaving that fabric of the port and maritime industry and how that's really taken hold here and the potential of making that tighter. And I want to talk to Tom about that later on too. But anyhow, we are a state agency, and our goal is to create economic well-being and jobs within the Commonwealth. And we are directly or indirectly responsible for over 300,000 jobs within the state. But we do that by working with our partners, and the 3 folks that spoke before me were ones I work with pretty much every day. I guarantee folks from my office work with people from their office every day of the week. And we try to bring that port expertise, because it's kind of a specialized business, but it's an economic engine. And I think some of these have used the analogy, we can be a tool in their economic development toolbox, or maybe a more romantic way of putting it is we can be the arrow in their economic development quiver, is the one that I like. But the point is that we go with them to help explain why the businesses should come here, why the business should grow here, why there's investment in the state or in the region or in Norfolk. And it might be as simple as this. It might be a company that Steve brings to us or Alan brings to us that wants to invest in the area, manufacture a product. The raw material is going to come out of Tema. The finished product is going to go to China. So they can come in and say, well, we need to have all this international logistics available. What can you do? And we can go and show them our port facilities. We can show them that we have room to expand for the next several decades. So if they're putting brick and mortar investment in with a need for a viable port, we're good for decades to a century to go. And we can also show that, oh, you're importing from West Africa. We have 3 services a week coming in, so we can guarantee that you have services coming. And we have 3 vessels a day leaving for China. So we can handle that flow. Plus, we have port incentives based on volume and job creation that are going to help your company. And we also offer and run the foreign trade zone, which if you're bringing in manufacturing and re-exporting, there's benefits there. So that's just one little example. But it's things like that, depending on the company that comes, as far as how we can add value as the port operator. The second thing I want to talk about is the whole port and maritime industry. Now, the Port Authority and the state own the container terminals. So it's all about container business coming and going. A little bit of things like automobiles and some other things that aren't in containers, but we're 97% probably containers. But the whole industry outside that is complementary. We have the deepest channels on the East Coast, but it's for the coal industry, for the military, for the grain ships coming and going. So it really is a rising tide lifts all boats is the analogy. But we're seeing that everybody is growing because of the dependency and because of the things that we have going on. Now there's some things that maybe don't make sense that we're driving, but you look at some things just in Norfolk. The U.S. headquarters for the French shipping company, CMA-CGM, has 650 people maybe at their U.S. headquarters in Norfolk. The Israeli company Zim has probably 350 or more at the U.S. headquarters in Norfolk. Maersk Line Limited at Copenhagen, or Danish company, probably about 200 or 300 just across the street down here. Those could be anywhere in the country, and they're here in Norfolk because of the maritime heritage, expertise, and the workforce development that's being involved or grown now from the community college level up through the university level. So it's all those partners coming together. But then it goes even further. Steve used the example of attorneys and banking and whatnot. There's a whole system or a whole segment of maritime attorneys, maritime accounting, maritime insurance. All those are part of that community that complement each other and build somewhat that fabric of the maritime and logistics community, or maybe help us to build. I want to figure out what that innovation icon is going to be for ports and logistics. We're well on that way with many partners coming together to form a strong base. And if that's one thing that maybe you can take back from here, an example that we're beginning to do well and I think going to get better, and maybe you can share with us things that you folks do that we can learn from too. And that's where I see our partnership with the port communities that are here today too. So thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you very much. Do you want to take, are there any questions?
Sure, if there's
that
questions.
you'd like? We could take one or two right now or move on.
Sure.
The example you used between Africa and China, you actually do that?
Well, I just made that up for the people in the room, but I could think of one. I'm sure if you give me time.
But you're open to do that?
We're open to offer that advice or to do those services.
To partner with us as sister cities.
Absolutely. Well, we can't. As far as setting up those services, say between Halifax and it would have to be driven by volume. We can't, and neither your port nor I can go to an ocean carrier and say we want to start a service between the two cities. We have to find that volume that is between those cities. If it's there, we identify it and we reel them in as customers. If not, then we work in some way to identify growing that business. From Halifax, we have some business coming as paper that comes between Halifax and
You have a free trade zone, and we can't
foreign trade zone in the U.S.
And we can't seem to get one. So I'm thinking, how do we leverage that to help us? That could go to China or Africa.
Well, we would. I'd have to think more about that, but it would just be showing you what we do within the foreign trade zone and what type of businesses come into it. It's a foreign trade zone is a U.S. federal process. The free trade zones are similar around the world, so it would depend on what the laws are there too.
All the sister cities that you have established relations with are coastal cities.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
And I think that has to do with
Yeah.
the maritime heritage,
Precisely.
Yeah.
the business, and,
Precisely.
and you know, shipbuilding, ship repair, I can go on and on with the
Common
industries.
element.
Absolutely.
One more
Yes, sir.
question back.
Morning.
Well, as far as economy is concerned, nowadays we cannot, China is the fast growing economy in the world. Because almost international recognition makes their business in China.
Mhm.
So, would you like to comment what
I'm not sure I understand. Comment on
your China?
China? Well, you know, 17 years ago, well, we can go back further than that. We can go back 400 and some years at this point. John Smith came from Europe, established the Jamestown colonies. We exported the first tobacco back out several years after that. So we've been a port, because of our location, it's been in Europe and the Mediterranean, that area, for most of the time. Goods from China would come into the west coast of the U.S. and rail across. Well, that all changed about 15 years ago, in my humble opinion, driven by the Walmarts and Targets of the world that put distribution centers on the east coast where the population was. Well, that changed the whole thing. And then you see the Panama Canal expanding, and the bigger ships will come that way. But in the meantime, we've seen the bigger ships already coming through the Suez. So where most of our trading partners were European, for the last 10 years probably, China's been the #1 trading partner on imports and the #1 trading partner on exports. And we've seen other countries, India, up that chart. Other Asian countries go up that chart too. And we see that changing all the time because of how economies change. Quickly with China, where we were an importer so much, we're seeing that now with China as more of a consumer nation, we're seeing more exports going. From our area, one of the things is grain. Grain that goes here to feed livestock, for better cuts of meat and better produce, livestock, and what I'm trying to say, better meat products and poultry products.
One follow-up.
Sure.
The very reason for China, because of very cheap human labor.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Is the reason, sir, why China, we cannot compare as far as economy is concerned, because of their cost of the human labor is very cheap, cannot compare to other countries.
Well, yeah, and just to say that, and that's been from a manufacturing standpoint and all too. We're seeing some of that wage, if you will, rise, which is creating that consumer class or middle class that we're now feeding exports to. I think it might have been last time we were in Ningbo, one of the real conversations was, we've been exporting, now we see all this import. And the analogy for that was, we've been always putting people on the bus, now we're getting people off the bus. So it was a rethinking of how much import is now coming into China because of the economy going that way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.